My father's new wife, Brenda, stormed into our lives, intent on rewriting the past. She not only took my mother's place in the house, but also tried to usurp her title with an arrogance that chilled me to the bone. She demanded, with a severity that left no room for argument, that I call her mom for real. She flatly refused to respond to any other form of address, ignoring my voice as if I were a ghost in my own home whenever I used her name. Faced with her imposition, I took up the only weapon I had left: absolute silence. I stopped speaking to her altogether, turning our life together into a war of absences and empty stares. My mother died when I was just 12 years old. Cancer was a cruel thief that slowly took her away over 18 agonizing months. I watched her fade away in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped rhythmically, marking the end of the kindest person I had ever known. She was the soul of our home, the one who filled every corner with her laughter and the scent of her jasmine perfume. Losing her was like the world draining of color, and watching Brenda try to paint over that void with garish, artificial hues was something my heart simply couldn't bear. It all exploded one Sunday afternoon during family dinner. We were sitting at the dining room table, the same place where my mother used to serve dishes prepared with love and care. Now, there was takeout food and a 42-year-old woman sitting in her chair, looking at me impatiently. "Elena, answer Brenda," my father said, breaking the thick silence. I kept eating my rice, my eyes fixed on my plate. I cut a piece of dried chicken and chewed slowly, feeling the tension spread across the table like spilled oil. I wasn't going to give in. I wasn't going to give a single word to someone who despised the memory of my origins. "Elena Mariana Torres, your stepmother is speaking to you," my father repeated, his tone heavy with frustration, the same one he used when he felt he was losing control. I took my glass of water and drank slowly, savoring every second of his desperation. For me, they didn't exist in that moment. Only the texture of the rice and the weight of my loneliness existed. Brenda, unable to bear my indifference, slammed her fork against her plate with a metallic clang that echoed off the walls. "This girl is rude. I can't believe you allow this behavior, Esteban," she exclaimed, seeking in my father the punishment his own authority couldn't deliver. My father rubbed his face, exhausted. At 54, he looked older than I remembered. The gray hair at his temples and the deep wrinkles around his eyes told the story of a man desperately searching for a peace he didn't know how to create. Ever since he married Brenda 8 months ago, exhaustion seemed to have settled permanently on his skin. "Elena, please, just say hello," he pleaded. But the chicken Brenda had served tasted like cardboard with salt, an insult compared to the lemon and garlic marinated chicken my mother made with herbs from her own garden. There was nothing on that table worth my voice. Brenda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping the floor. She declared she would no longer tolerate my disrespect and stormed out of the room, leaving my father with his head in his hands. He tried to convince me she was just going through a rough patch, but I knew the truth. She'd been trying to erase my mother for 8 months. I remembered how, in her first week back home, she opened Mom's closet to ask when we would donate her clothes. It had only been 6 months since the funeral. Then she reorganized the kitchen and threw out my mother's cookbooks because they took up unnecessary space. Brenda didn't want to be part of the family. She wanted to own her remains. I went up to my room in silence, hearing Brenda's shouts downstairs. I sat on my bed and looked at the photo on my desk. My mother and I in the park when I was 11. Her arms were around me from behind, and we were both smiling in the summer sun. I could almost smell the jasmine on her skin. "Don't worry, Mom," I whispered. "I won't let her take your place." When my father came into my room to try to talk, I was clear. I wasn't going to call her Mom. I wasn't going to pretend to be happy when I wasn't, and I wasn't going to let anyone ignore the fact that he had married too quickly, as if he wanted to fill a pothole instead of honoring a lifelong love. That night, the air in the house became unbearable. My Aunt Noelia, my mother's younger sister, texted me after my cousin Camila told her what had happened at dinner. She offered me refuge in her home, a place where the flowers in the windows and the scent of hot chocolate with cinnamon reminded me of what we once had. I packed a small backpack and slipped out the front door while my father and Brenda argued quietly in the living room. Walking in the crisp October air was the first real respite I'd had in months. At my aunt's house, there were no forced ghosts or imposed titles, only the echo of my mother's love. The next day, my father showed up at my aunt's door, demanding I come back. But Noelia stood firm. She reminded him that Brenda hadn't lost her mother, but I had, and that if his new wife couldn't understand the pain of a teenage girl, then she had no place in that house. I spent 3 peaceful days away from Brenda's demands. When my father returned for the 4th time, something about him had changed. Perhaps it was seeing my resolve, or realizing that his silence in the face of Brenda's abuse was pushing me away forever. "I'm going to talk to her," he promised. "And you're going to listen to me too," I replied. Finally, my father accepted that he couldn't force my heart to forget. He understood that my silence wasn't pointless rebellion, but a shield to protect the most sacred thing I had left, the identity of the woman who gave me life. I returned home on my own terms, knowing the battle wasn't over, but that my voice and my silence had a power no one could take from me. My mother's garden was still dry, but now I was ready to water it again, one seed at a time, without letting anyone ever trample on her memory again.